I am live with Nick Merrill, that goes under at Elshow on Twitter. And I noticed Nick involvement in some of the applications that are built on Juno network, the network that I'm overly exposed, the network that I'm mainly interested in, because I see many people doing the stuff that I care about, and they seem to be very engaged. And I think Unique are one of the people that appear to me to be really interesting, because when I look at the blockchain, I never seem to. I don't know who built on Ethereum. I don't know that much. But when it comes to the Juno network, it's easy to find the builders. And there was a tweet from the centralized name service, and someone mentioned you there. And then I opened your website, and I was like, oh, this is such a brainy guy, someone way more intelligent than I am. Uh, I
Got
actually
that.
was watching just your interview with Jake Hartnell. You call yourself
Hmm.
salaryman. So if you could like introduce yourself, what you do, maybe what's your area of interest, expertise, and when did you get into blockchain for the first
Mm.
time, any
Yeah.
kind?
Yeah. So my name's Nick Merrill. I came from a very academic background. I am a research fellow at UC Berkeley, which is kind of U.S. higher ed institutions. I'm from California. This is one of our big universities, and I was doing research for many years, and I was a huge skeptic about blockchain. I felt for years and years and years that it was a neat solution in search of a problem. And it was Jake Hartnell, whom I went to grad school with, who convinced me otherwise. And he got me involved with Juno. And I began to see the kind of strengths and limitations of smart contracting. I came to see smart contracting as something that can really work. Computation is a common good in a sense. It's kind of a utility, a public utility. And I found that the Juno networks pop-ups that we're having connection
So
issues. Is my stream
do
clear?
you think it's on your side or on mine side? Because maybe your side. I'm not sure. But now it's okay. Hello?
Hey, are we having connection issues? Maybe tell me what I missed. I'll go
We
back.
had connection issues, yes.
Okay.
But not,
All right. Well, long story short, I got involved with Juno thanks to Hartnell. I found that this community was not just like kind of a glorified securities fraud, that they're actually building a meaningful public utility. And dove in, and I suppose the rest is history. Since then, really, I've been working on DaoDao mostly, where I think that's probably where most of my energy has been going. And to me, I think DaoDao is kind of, not to be myopic about it, but kind of the culmination of a lot of what Juno can really do, and kind of demonstrates a lot of its power. So, I think really my main contribution, as I see it, more than anything else that I do, is this kind of theorizing what blockchain can really do, and how blockchain can work at the intersection of technical practice and political change, meaningful political change.
so
And it's, yeah.
so sorry for stopping you. So your first involvement with blockchain was actually Juno, or maybe
Yeah.
because you said smart contracting is something that caught your eye, and then DAO. So it wasn't Ethereum. I understand you.
I was aware of Ethereum.
Yeah.
Listen, I was a college student during the Great Recession, and I encountered Bitcoin. I remember you could go to a Bitcoin FOSS and get like 5 Bitcoin by clicking a button, and I have no idea what happened. So I was aware of all of this stuff, and even I became aware of like Ralph Merkel's work and Merkel DAGs and all of that stuff. And I was like, wow, this is a really neat application of a lot of stuff that's been floating around for a while. But at the same time, Bitcoin had this conspiratorial tinge to it. It had this kind of like weirdly anti-Semitic tinge to it that's like, whatever, it didn't resonate with me. And then Ethereum, I was like, this is cool. At the same time, I don't see, this kind of massive, everyone has to do the same computation, there's no sharding as practical, right? I got it, but I didn't like really get it. And to be honest with you, and I don't want, there's amazing stuff happening in Ethereum. I think that it's been borne out somewhat in the sense that like Ethereum is completely, in my mind, captured by capital interests. This is effectively a network that is dominated by capital interests. Okay, there's very little of interest happening on Ethereum that is not that does not follow this kleptocratic logic. There are exceptions. There are great exceptions, good exceptions. So anyway, all right. I got involved with Juno because, these people, I think, really understood this kind of coming together collaboratively to build a public utility. And that really just was something that was really cool to me. And also talking with people, I was like, oh, these people really understand the strengths and limitations of smart contracts and are realistic about, what those strengths and limitations are. So, I kind of fell down the rabbit hole that way. And now here I am at DaoDao.
Yeah, so someone is a little bit rude in the comment, but could you tell me like what was the Semitic?
Yeah. Okay, so listen, this is not a reflection of all the people who use Bitcoin. There's some tiny minority of people who are involved in Bitcoin who believe like anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about central banks. And I think that people who believe these things get involved in Bitcoin rather than like all Bitcoin people believe these things, right? But I was just seeing all of this weird stuff. And there are a lot of super, super smart people who are working on a lot of Bitcoin core developers who are obviously super, super smart. But I just didn't see a place for myself to contribute to that project as an open source developer, right? And with Ethereum as well, I kind of could imagine myself contributing, but just didn't, how it is with open source. You have to really want to do it because it takes a lot of time. And Juno was the first one where I was like, I really want to do this. This is a cool community. And that's kind of how it went.
I want to say, because many people say, oh, Bitcoin is not anti-Semitic. Do I pronounce? I feel I pronounce it wrong. Anti-Semitic. Can you pronounce anti?
I pronounce it anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic. So but I have the same feeling quite often. So many people don't see it, but when I talk to people in crypto, I say look, crypto has massive issues with alt-right. And I'm like, I see it. I'm on Twitter. I read the tweets.
Yes.
Like, no, it's the freedom movement. I mean, it's not. it's actually all right. Like, I see it. So some people seem to ignore that, but like when I'm on Twitter, which you are from UC Berkeley. I know you are fine, right? Like I knew you like not into, but that's interesting because I didn't know so many people had academic background, including Juno. Like you said, Jake Hartnell and also Sunny Agrawal, who built Osmosis, probably you're aware. He was going to UC Berkeley as well. And there seem to be a lot of people who actually built within this Cosmos ecosystem that come from Berkeley. So what is it with Berkeley that so many people that is involved in the blockchain actually come from there? Like if we can go away from Juno just for this moment.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, the boring answer, of course, is network effects. We all, are kind of drinking from the same Kool-Aid in a way. And these things kind of move through communities. There's an epidemiological explanation for it that's straightforward. I would like to believe, though, that there's an ideological explanation for it as well. Like, I think that the Cosmos community does put a lot of emphasis on self-sovereignty and governance. And those are things that resonate with people from Berkeley. We believe in, flexible governance and, kind of these, for lack of a better word, radically democratic, ways of thinking and governing. And the Cosmos ecosystem, I think its emphasis on that, especially relative to, Ethereum's kind of emphasis on a single chain that will be the canonical chain for everything. Not only does it make, kind of performance sense, which I think bears out in gas fees and other kinds of ways, it makes a political sense that I think is appealing to a certain type of person that is also, to whom Berkeley is appealing.
And so, because I brought this Because many people don't realize that the people who build the blockchain are not necessarily shady people, but I think that the Sane, for example, has like deep knowledge into economics and like financial systems and stuff like this, and people who actually got involved, they actually trying to solve the certain issues. um but going to Juno, right? When I want to start with the distribution, because when it comes to most of the blockchains, they get the investments from the venture capitalists
Mhm.
and other private rounds and stuff like this. And Juno was a little bit different. Juno take the approach of the airdrop, and I just want to like hear. Do you think the airdrops are the right way of distribution? That do you think the airdrop is somehow sustainable way? Do you think that there will not be other issues like people trying to game it, and essentially it will become the kind of shit show happening with all of that? So do you
This is a
think
great
this is
question.
do you think
Yeah.
this is
So
the
listen,
best
let
way
me
of
start with
actually distribution? Yeah.
the highest level answer to your question. Are airdrops perfect? No. Okay. Airdrops are not a perfect mechanism. I think that they can be iteratively made more perfect through a variety of mechanisms, which we'll talk about in a second. But let me flip that question on its head and talk about alternatives to airdrops. Okay. You want to fund your community, you want to, continue development. There is kind of a tangible material need for financing. Okay. What are other ways of getting financing beside airdrops, right? There's venture capital funding. I think we can all agree intuitively that this is fraud. Okay. Juno took no venture capital funding. There's simply no venture capital funding behind Juno at all. And this sets us apart from many other blockchains I won't name explicitly that are primarily funded by venture capital. Okay, we didn't do that. On top of that, we allocated most of the money to a community pool. So whatever we're saying about the airdrop, it represented a tiny minority of the number of Juno tokens available. Most of those go to the community pool, which would be given out by governance. Okay, so now let's get to the airdrop question itself. Are airdrops perfect? Can airdrops be gamed? No and yes, of course. And in fact, I won't go too much into specifics here. The Juno airdrop was gamed. Okay. It was, however, around the margins enough that governance was still possible and robust governance was still possible. And this is ultimately what we think about. Okay. We're never going to produce a perfect system by which gaming is impossible and everything is perfectly fair. What we can produce, however, is something where the gaming happens within an exceptional margin of error, after which fair governance can still occur. And as long as we have this community pool, we can kind of iteratively correct for the mistakes in the initial allocation through governance proposals. And this is ultimately what we attempted to do. And again, there are many imperfections. This process we're learning as we go. It's part of what Juno is all about. But I would argue that given the realistically available options, we took the least bad of all options on the table.
Yeah, I just have, because I was thinking like, well, airdrops can be gained, but there's no really alternative. And I think you were referring to this one wallet, or rather, that was 50 wallets, right, with 50,000.
Yes,
But
I
they don't seem
understand.
to be selling. So it's like sometimes I have these concerns when I look at the price, because I'm not the builder, I'm the speculator, but I'm also curious about things. That's why I talk to you. And it's like, hey, if this person will try to sell it one day, I mean, probably network will survive, but the people would be pretty upset, to,
Yeah.
to say the least, right? Um, I was not sure if you were aware of the Secret Network, and there was the founder of the Secret Network, and he actually was saying, and I even saw people commenting on that. How is it possible that the tokens that are given essentially for free, which I don't think it's for free, because the tokens are given for participation and for securing the network. That's my understanding. But some people
Mhm.
call it, hey, the tokens were given for free, so the cost base is at a zero. And the claim of the people is tokens have value because the venture capitalists invest into them. That's how the value got driven. Could you, because I didn't know how I could respond to such a claim, because my belief is that the fact that someone invests 10 million in the company and value the token at certain price doesn't necessarily mean the token has this price, that the price is something different than just
Right.
investment into this. How you
Right.
could answer this question? Sorry if I'm
It's such a
chaotic.
complex question, and I am not an economist, right? I have access to economists and I have access to political economists, and I ask them questions sometimes. And really, what comes back always is that theories of value and price are underspecified, and we don't have actually a fantastic theory of value and price. And the consensus that I have kind of condensed from what everyone tells me is that theories of price and value are not well borne out outside of this particular context of Western financial markets. And there's this particular kind of formulation of a market that applies very, very well in the West. And in fact, the West then models off of these economic models, which increases the model's kind of theoretical fit, right? But there are other formulations of exchange to which our theories about price and value do not really well explain the behavior that we see. And in some sense, the fact that we have these tokens that are valued at whatever price, and actually we can't explain it, where there is no okay, listen, look, no venture capitalists existed in Juno, and yet Juno tokens have a price. Okay, so clearly the explanation that is given here is not totally satisfying, to explain the reality that we observe. So how do we explain how these Juno tokens got a price, right? And we can come up, we could kind of, for lack of a better word, bullshit some explanations together between the two of us. But the end explanation is that we don't really understand how this works. And the last time this happened was in the .com bubble, which wasn't, it was a huge bubble and bust, but remember, there was also a lot of fundamental value in that bubble. Amazon also existed in that bubble, right? And Apple existed, and all of these other companies existed in that bubble. There was this time when people had trouble understanding what gave things value, okay? And I think we're in a similar situation here. It's unclear where value is, how the fundamental value, factors into price, what price is a function of, in other words, right? And you see this wild speculation because, well, if we don't know what has value, anything can have value. And that creates this kind of bubble mentality. At the same time, I think people who really work deep in this space know that there are some things that do have fundamental value. Okay, how that will in the long term relate to price, I don't know, but I can tell you that, a permissionless smart contracting platform that supports, kind of type safe, memory safe language like Rust has a fundamental value, right? There simply is a fundamental, someone will pay for that, right? Because you want these kind of computations to be verifiable, and you want it to be easy to audit that, the code that's been uploaded does work the way that you want. And you want a safe language for that, and you want a permissionless blockchain for that. And so this is basically what Juno does, and this is what drives Juno's value. Now, how does this relate to price? I don't know, but clearly there's some kind of demand for the service. How that factors in has to do with all these material constraints. And, this is my long way of saying we don't know. And it is both the case that we are in a tremendous speculative bubble in Web3, and there's a tremendous amount of value in Web3. Both of these things are true. I retweeted recently, actually, this
I wanted
Wikipedia.
to say that I just opened your tweet about the .com commercials, right? Is it
Right.
this what you wanted to say?
Yes, yeah, and you can put that in chat or whatever. I tweeted this Wikipedia article on .com commercials during the Super Bowl, and during the last Super Bowl, there were all of these kind of crypto, hate that word, ads as well. So this Twitter account is great, by the way. I definitely recommend following Molly White, and she has this website called Web3 is Going Great. All of these hilarious issues. Please give this person a follow, okay? And also, I just want to say quickly, if you're one of these Web3 people that thinks that anyone who's skeptical in any way of Web3 is somehow the enemy, I don't know what to tell you, okay? You've got to take in dissenting opinions, especially from really smart people like Molly White. If you can't handle this, I don't know what to tell you. All right, anyway. So my point in all of this is that clearly there is a tremendous amount of speculative, irrational exuberance about stuff that's going on in this space. And I think that fundamentally that's because it is difficult to assess value in this space, especially for people who aren't really deep into it, right? And it's funny because, I have a strong theory that the thing that I'm working on happens to have a lot of value, and I could be wrong, right? But ultimately, I do think that we're living in this funny time, which is often the case during speculative bubbles, that there is real value, right? I'm from California. We were founded on, kind of the white settlement in California came from the gold rush. There was actually gold. We remember it as the speculative, bubble, but there was literally gold under the ground, and it created this economy. And look at California today. Like, yes, the gold rush was a bust for a majority of participants who got in too late, ill-informed, got, ripped off on equipment and land and other services and all these things. Nevertheless, somehow this boom and bust economy led to somehow crazy way the sustainable-ish, I don't know how sustainable California is really, economic growth over the long term. And, we see this kind of historical narrative play out again and again, and we're seeing that again in Web 3. So going back all the way to your original question here, people say, well, the VCs give things the price or whatever. This is a kind of an older way of thinking about stuff. Clearly, it doesn't explain everything. We don't know what does explain everything, but that question mark, that thing we don't know, is what makes Web3 this site of both intense innovation and intense speculation. And they both coexist together. And, it takes a lot of luck and chance to even on top of skill to tell the two apart.
I'm so happy that you said about the speculation part, because I always say to people, look, I like to talk about Juno, but I don't know about the price. Like, I'm not the expert. I don't know if the price go up or go down. I talk about Juno because there is some interesting people building on it, and
Right.
usually we don't know, like people didn't know that Facebook will be successful in the early days. That was the speculation. But I look at Juno, hey, some of these things could actually work maybe one day for me, or at least I like them now. But it's the speculation at this moment. And, we need to probably talk more about the part of the speculation. I used to bring some of the blockchains. One start with the name C.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in the springtime, which was valued at 60 billion, and it did not have smart contracts. And I was like,
I
this is
know
speculation.
exactly what you're talking about. And also, they were talking
Yeah,
about, listen, this still happens. You see people do like Ethereum's moving to proof of stake. It's like, okay, well, I've been
yeah,
working on a proof of stake chain for years. Like, what are you guys doing?
yeah.
We're doing, and on top, and in the EVM and all the, anyway, whatever. I don't want to actually poo-poo any other project. Let me actually get back to the speculation question. Okay.
Mhm.
Here's what I look at, because I don't know any, and like I said, I'm really agnostic about the price of this. We work on DaoDao. Okay. So the thing that is in front of my desk day after day is the following. How much does it cost to create a DAO? Okay, how much does it cost to vote on a proposal on a DAO, right? We need to keep that cost acceptably low. And if it's costing people like more than $1 to make a DAO, or costing people more than $1 to vote on a proposal, the price is too high, the gas fees are too high, something has gone awry, right? But really it costs people like, 25 cents usually to make a DAO,
Mhm.
an absolute maximum, in which case we say, all right, you know what, that's acceptable. Descriptively, plenty of people are making DAOs. So regardless of what the price of Juno is doing, which, yeah, it fluctuates and we don't exactly know where it would or should or could settle, but as long as the price of user action stays acceptably low, that descriptively users are taking those actions, the price is fine,
Yeah.
right?
Like, also I want to say about the VCs. Somehow I feel I don't want to sound overly bullish, because I don't want to convince anyone to do bad moves or decisions. But it seems I lost Nick, so I will send him the. Oh, okay. I lost you for a moment, not
Sorry,
for
my
too long.
browser crashed. Yeah.
That's fine. And these things happen. For me, when I see that some token that has price of $100, and I know that venture capitalists invested in this project for at the price of 50 cents,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of make you feel bad, because there is long way down from this point, and the VCs still will be fine. But with
Right.
Juno, it's kind of like you don't know anything, right? Because there was no these VCs. It was kind of airdropped for free, but that doesn't feel wrong. So
Listen, I
that's
don't
why.
recommend to anyone, okay, and I mean this, and I don't care if this makes someone upset. I don't recommend to anyone but to buy Juno because you think the price is going to go up and you're going to
Yeah,
get money off of it, okay? If you want, buy Juno because you want to make a DAO on DaoDao. Buy Juno because you want to participate in our governance practice, okay? We
yeah.
don't really care if what the price does. We
Which
want to build good applications that work well. That creates value.
and this is the thing why I like Juno, because people keep, like, even when they comment on my channel, they comment about the price, but they don't understand. I don't think people care about the price who built on Juno. Like this,
It's not what motivates
yeah.
me. This is a
Yeah.
cool open source project that does a really cool thing, and we're using it to build cool things
Mhm.
that will in turn create value. Maybe I'll create something on top of Juno where I do care about the pricing
Mhm.
thing. Okay, but
Can I
Juno
can I ask you
isn't that thing.
before we get into DaoDao? I want, because I'm not programmer. Maybe I will take the course on Rust language, but I want to
Mhm.
know. Even I saw Jack Dorsey was tweeting that Rust is the future, right? And as the person who doesn't know anything,
Mhm.
why is Rust and not Solidity? Why to you Rust is better?
Right.
Um, just
So
yeah.
let me avoid the solidity question for now. We can get back to it if we want to. Let me
Mhm.
instead extol the virtues of Rust. Okay, so Rust is it is harder than any other language to make typical programming errors in. Partially, this is because the compiler messages are really, really good, and the compiler will prevent you from doing these kinds of things. And the other is that the basic language design and also the design, because kind of Rust thinking people built the libraries, and especially I'm thinking about Ethan Frey with Cosmwasm and that whole team. The Cosmwasm team, by the way, is amazing. Juno would not exist without the Cosmwasm team. All of those folks have done such amazing work. And, they built these libraries that use these like really powerful Rust primitives to build these like CW tests. There's a CW multi-test library that makes it just so easy to test your code well. Um, that is really, I think, what makes Rust shine when it comes to
Can
smart contracting.
can you tell quickly what is Cosmwasm? Because I understand
Sure.
this as you can use the modules they have to build your
Right.
own applications in Rust. Is it
Right. So
so?
Cosmwasm is a few things.
Mhm.
First of all, the Cosmos ecosystem is built with this very cool object capability security model, which if you've ever
Mhm.
been familiar with Smalltalk, it's a cool way of passing messages around, except in this case, the messages are kind of permission security. And the messages are passed between these modules and Smalltalk objects, modules, okay? So what Cosmwasm did was implement a WASM virtual machine, WebAssembly virtual machine, in a Cosmos module. So this module can now run a virtual machine, which can in turn interpret Rust. The Rust gets compiled down into WASM bytecode and executed on the chain. So the Cosmwasm team, first of all, implemented this. And second of all, implemented all of these useful utility libraries for testing smart contracts on top of this. And then Juno basically is an ecosystem around, Cosmwasm that facilitates its development and provisions this module as actually a permissionless smart contracting platform.
So is it Cosmwasm or EVM? What's gonna win? Like there seems to
Listen,
be
I'm
big
not really
argument.
in a competitive mindset
Yeah.
about this, and I am agnostic to like winners or lose. That's not how I
Yeah.
think about the world. What I think about is if I wanted assurance that a smart contract that I'm executing works correctly, which language would I prefer that it's written in? And Rust and the Rust ecosystem in general, not even to mention the Cosmwasm ecosystem, the kind of testability and interpretability of what is actually
Mhm.
happening, with Rust code gives me more confidence if I personally, as like an informed smart contract executor, am trying to make a decision, assuming I actually am reading a smart contract, right?
Mhm.
And I think instead of thinking about winning, right, what I would probably orient people toward is more kind of what bugs you see, what kinds of bugs are they, and why did they occur? And you see all the time these kind of double spend bugs and stuff popping up again and again and again in EVM. And it comes to the point. It's like, why are people making the same programming error at the cost of cumulatively billions of dollars? It almost makes you think that this might be a hard kind of error to avoid in this platform. And indeed, that is the case, right? We need to make these errors easier to avoid, in fact, hard to do. So Rust is one of the tools in that tool chain. And again, like I've been talking a lot about Rust, but it's more than just Rust. It's a testing infrastructure and all of these other things around it that Rust makes it easy to build. But the infrastructure in general around it makes it harder and harder and harder to do these kinds of bugs. Now, will someone write like a bad smart contract that gets totally rinsed and people steal $100 million worth of value from it? Probably, someone probably will, right? But for a good experienced developer, we want to make it really hard for them to do. And we also want to make it really easy for security specialists to audit those contracts. And that's really kind of the developer experience that we're oriented toward.
Juno, when you open page Juno, and it's sometimes hard to explain because it says it's permissionless smart contract platform. And I can go and say, look, it's permissionless smart contract platform is so good. But when I would read about Solana, it also says it's permissionless smart contract platform. And I would like to be able to clarify what means permissionless on Juno and what's the permissionless on Juno different from permissionless of Solana. Do you have the answer for me, maybe?
I don't know enough about Solana to answer that question live on the air. I would have to do research on that and get back to you to give you a really succinct answer that I'm confident.
That would be cool. I would
Let me tell you something else.
Future talk as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love that. Yeah. This has been really fun. I'd love to do this again. I think one thing I would orient you toward those, it depends who you're talking to about this, right? Like when I onboarded someone who you talked to, Zeke, onto the Cosmos and onto Juno. And, knowing that Zeke was a developer, I sat down with him. And I, took out a piece of paper and I showed him how the Cosmos ecosystem works. And I explained I explained this modular OCAPS model, and I explained IBC. And I said, okay. And then I explained CosmWasm, and I explained this, and then I explained Rust. And then once he saw that, and he had worked on Solana previously, he was like, oh yeah, okay, this is really good. This is what you want. So that's the kind of the developer onboarding. And then for people who might just be using apps in Web3 and want to know what ecosystem is good, forget permissionless smart. Don't worry about that. Put them onto the apps that are built on top of Juno, and see what they like to use, right? And my guess, most people are going to say, wow, these are a lot cheaper for me to use than the equivalents on other chains. The fees are simply lower and the transactions are simply faster, right? And ultimately, that is the sell. That is the only sell that matters to the end user. It cannot be hundreds of dollars for you to do stuff on Web3 unless you're some super, super rich person. And, you don't really need to bother people with the fact that it's permissionless or that it's written on Rust. They don't care, right?
Yeah, you're right. People don't want to know they use blockchain. They just want to have thing that works and it's cheap.
Ideally, I wouldn't want people to know that they're using blockchain at all. Listen, very few people know they're using SMTP when they're sending emails, right? And the whole .com boom, I mean, I guess, I've done some kind of amateur historiography about the .com bubble. And one of the things that stands out to me is how much people focused on, and in particular, SQL databases. SQL and databases were somehow this thing that got stuck in investors' minds as something that drives value, right? And I think blockchains have similarly gotten stuck in people's minds. This is the thing that drives value, okay? And focusing on the database itself wasn't quite right. Actually, the thing about the .com bubble, and I personally think that this is a bad thing, was the ability for people to take a privileged position in the network and extract data in a way that effectively allowed them to be the market maker of people's private data. And this kind of gave rise to what we now know as surveillance capitalism, right? This was really the fundamental driver of value. The relationship between that driver of value and databases, there is a relationship, but putting it on the databases wasn't quite the right way of analyzing it, right? And I think similarly with blockchains, putting it all on the blockchain isn't quite the right way of capturing value. What we have in Web3 is this kind of inchoate, inchoate ecosystem that can go one of many ways. The way I'd like to see it go is toward collective ownership and worker ownership, and kind of a more direct way to seize the means of production among workers and seize the means of data production among people who do this kind of unpaid click work online, right? So we develop things with that in mind. Of course, there are many other people who look at it a different way, and the capital class looks at this a very, very different way, and we can kind of get into all of that. But, I think that blockchain and orienting it toward this technology, it doesn't really capture the social and situated driver of value, similarly to the way people got this wrong in .com.
Just one thing, because Juno is cheap and fast right now. And I know it meant to scale up to 10,000 transactions per second. But I heard some voices that actually, when we would get like to few thousand transactions a second, at this moment, there would be issue and the fees would be high. Like,
Mhm.
so not sure if
Well, listen, scaling means a lot of different things, right? Like, can it
yeah
handle 10,000 transactions? Absolutely. Will the fees go up? Absolutely. You know, that's how
yeah.
that works because sometimes if there's more congestion,
And
there's competition for validator time.
I wonder if I'm not saying that we would need like Juno would need that, but can
Mhm.
Juno ever scale to higher than that? Is it
Absolutely. Listen, the thing
upgrading the
about
fees?
Cosmos and the reason
Mhm,
why I would say, the Cosmos ecosystem is more adaptable is that you can upgrade, right? And if
mhm,
you don't want to upgrade, you can start a different chain without forking and it's still be interoperable with the legacy chain.
mhm,
We can, if we need to, and I don't think we'll ever need to, I think we'll probably just continue to patch Juno until it's like, whatever, and there are various ways of managing the validator set and all of these things that
mhm,
will allow it to scale and we'll implement those in time, right? So I don't see this happening anytime soon, but sometime in the distant future when there's some unforeseen scaling or security issue, we can always start a new Juno chain and it would still be interoperable with the old chain. It's going to be fine, right? It's not
mhm.
really a big deal to do these kinds of upgrades. So, like, will Juno as it currently exists have scaling issues? Like, of course, everything has scaling issues eventually. Will we be able to upgrade it? Yes, easily, right? And instead, I think what we see with some other chains, and especially I think Ethereum is kind of the poster child for this, is that it can be tough to upgrade these things. And it's not to say Ethereum will never upgrade. Of course it will. And the upgrade will be, so much better than what Ethereum is now. And there's a lot of careful thought and careful research going into it, which is fantastic. But ease of upgrade is really one of these things that really, really matters. And we see this story play out again and again and again in the history of the internet. And I think, Cosmos, although not explicitly, it's more modeled off the way the internet has historically worked with these like rough consensus and running code type of mentality, more so than some of the other chains out there.
Mhm. Um, DaoDao. Okay,
Mhm.
let's because I know you're quite short on time as well, so I don't want to leave it for the very end. What is DAO?
A DAO is an organization that is cryptographically assured to obey the democratic wishes of its token holders.
That's that's deeper explanation that I because it's like organization that govern
It's an
yourself, right?
organization, yeah. It's an organization, and the kind of tokens represent voting shares in that organization. You
Mhm.
can vote on proposals. And the reason this gets cool is because the organization, first of all, embodies this immutable record of, governance decisions that have happened. And you can use these kind of in human readable laws, but those governance decisions can also be machine readable. So effectively, the DAO can embody this like running program that you can update and vote on updates in this kind of collaborative way.
Why do we really need DAOs? Like, can't we do it in the way it's done right now? Why is it not like I saw the DAO. There was hundreds, I think hundreds, maybe thousands. I wasn't
Mhm,
checking recently in last few days. What I mean by
mhm.
that. Do we need DAO for everything? Is it not gonna bring more chaos? Why we really need that?
Why do we really need DAOs? It's
Yeah.
a great question. So let's say you want to do something that requires you to raise money from various people. This is actually insanely hard to do legally. Okay. And once you get into the realm of internationally raising money, it's even harder, especially if you don't want someone in the middle. Now, if you get into the position where you not only want to raise money, maybe you even just want to do it in your neighborhood. Not only do you want to raise money, you want to raise money in a way where the people who have given money now can vote on the organization. This requires lawyers most people cannot afford, at least in the industrialized West. Okay, certainly speaking in the United States. Once you do this internationally with people from all over the world who can vote, the logistics become really, really difficult, and the expense and legal fees and all these things and the transaction fees, and there's so many people in the middle. Okay. So what DAOs enable you to do is pool resources and vote on resources without a middleman.
That's actually like such a good point. Because and also with the Juno, like don't want to bring the politics, but the people recently
Mhm.
talk a lot about politics, and I was seeing like, hey, raising money with crypto goes very fast, and we've seen it with the NFTs way faster than in the traditional way. And if any group of people need to raise money, like that will happen very quick with DAOs. As you said, that will be very easy. You don't have to go. And what's good thing with Juno, I think, it cannot be treated as the security because it was never sold. So it will never face these legal issues as well. The DAOs, I believe, built on Juno.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. So I'm not going to say so-and-so will never happen, because I think that the United States has always found creative ways of stopping people from challenging the kind of, incumbent authority of the financial institutions that kind of run our government, right? I think that the SEC effectively exists to make sure that incumbent financial institutions can always play this role as middleman and broker. And the reason for this is not as kleptocratic as it sounds. It provides a really, really convenient way for the US to intervene in private affairs. In the logic of the US, right? I think that the market logics are the organizing principle. And so if you allow people to have market logics, then you have actual kind of anarchy, right?
Again, we lost Nick. I believe Nick will come in just a few seconds, hopefully. Let me find him to make sure also I'm sending him the correct link. So just to answer, I am in new place today. I visited Pedram place in Cyprus, which is my friend. He left the house, so I just come over and took over his house. So that's why it's a little bit messy right now. Okay, I got information from the Nick. He's coming back. So yeah, I'm in the new place here in the Cyprus, so the setup might be a little bit off. And sorry if my energy is quite low. I'm trying to do my best as well. But I've been driving off-road whole day. So, but yeah. So Nick said the web app, probably the one I do. Okay, he's back. I might need to change maybe the restream. I used to like using it because it's quite easy to use, but it seems it's keep crashing for you. And hello, I think I might not hear you. Hello, I can't hear you. I think need to check maybe microphone. Your microphone. Yeah. Thank you everyone who come. I think it will be. And Nick will try again because there's issues with microphone. Feel free to drop the questions. I have few more questions regarding DaoDao.
I'm back on phone.
That's okay. That's okay. That's it's.
So I was in the middle of saying something, but I think we should continue on if you would prefer to.
Yeah. Let's go. Because I can't bring it up what you were exactly saying.
Oh yeah, I remember. So I mean, I think that my point was that, if hang on, let me put my headphones on. It's such a hot mess. I love when
you might be careful to not clog the microphone.
I'm going to use these. I think it'll sound a bit better. Yeah. Okay. So, if market logics are kind of the dominating way of organizing society, finding is that you need. Are we even? Can you even see me?
You disappeared right now,
Oh my gosh.
but I can hear you.
Oh, now I've lost everyone.
I can hear you though, but sorry guys for the issues that we are facing. I hope we can get a few more questions. Oh,
What are you doing here?
hey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Be careful to not cover with your fingers the microphone on your mobile as
I
well.
will. I
Yeah.
will. I think that the microphone should be coming from these
Okay.
headphones. I don't know what to tell you about any of this, but anyway. So all I was, I think, saying was that the SEC, its goal is to kind of get in between these market relations, a way of kind of regulating behavior, which is understandable if you're the U.S. government. That's kind of the only tool that you have. Now, yes, by current kind of securities rules, Juno isn't security, and certainly, if you talk to anyone in the Juno community, we don't see it as security, right? Which is why I just said, don't buy it, just expect it to go up. At the same time, whether the SEC will at some point label it security because they want to get between what DAOs are doing, I think that's a reasonably likely scenario. And the reason I believe this is that, most of the laws that DAOs, kind of work to ease people into without having to, have all these lawyers, those exist to prevent a lot of the behavior that, DAOs seek to facilitate. You aren't supposed to be able to create a small business that raises money from your community. You're supposed to go to a bank for that. You're supposed to put the bank in the middle of that transaction. And the fact that DAOs cut those people out of the middle will cause banks to complain to the SEC, and they have enough regulatory capture over the SEC that the SEC is reasonably likely to change the rules. And this is why, I agree with many, many people have said this. DAOs are not going to reform otherwise kleptocratic society. Change is social.
Yeah, like do you think do you believe every small business essentially will be DAO? Maybe. Do you think everything needs
There
a
are a
DAO?
lot of there is a lot of, I know my friend works at a worker-owned coffee shop. Should they be a DAO? Yeah, I don't know if they have to worry about it. They're kind of fine. They already have the benefits of worker ownership and community support. If you're doing some other kind of business, or even if you're doing something that isn't seen as a business in kind of the logic of kind of neoliberal society, like if you want to start, in my case, you want to start like an academic journal or an academic publication, right? That I think a DAO makes sense for, right? Because otherwise I'm paying lawyers to start a 501c3 and I have to, whatever, all these things. And remember, 501c3, this is a tax exempt organization. It's not like I'm using a DAO to like dodge taxes. I'm using a DAO to enable like international collaboration, basically, in a way that's incentivized, the way that, academic work should be incentivized. And that is the kind of thing where I think a DAO really shines. But you see, if you want to go, like you can go DAOup.zone with Seabuilt. This is an amazing tool for crowdfunding with DAOs. You can see what kind of
I
things
was
that get
in
built
this
with
chat.
that.
I actually wanted to say that when you mentioned that DAO is great for raising money, I wanted to say DAO up.
Yes, DAOup. DAOup's amazing. And actually, if you're coming to this totally cold, you don't know anything about DAOs or anything, go to DAOup.zone and you can see DAOs as a tool raising money. So I think when you transition that raising money to governance and ongoing, like kind of what you would otherwise call corporate governance, that's when you need to worry about the kind of DAOs and whatever. But listen, I think that DAOs, like most large corporations, should be DAOs, right? They would be easier to inspect. It would be easier to see why and how they made decisions, and that is really the nature of a public company. Ostensibly, the idea behind a public company is that they're auditable, but in actual practice, that's not the case. DAOs are actually auditable, and this immutable ledger, is the mechanism by which they are auditable.
I was asking this question if we need DAO for everything, because actually I saw there is campaign on DAO app, and I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's something related to NMN, which is molecule
Yes, I saw that. Yes.
that some research has shown, not many research, some research, unproven yet,
Mm-hmm.
that the NMN might be molecule that contribute to extension of the life, right? And I was trying to think why they need it, why. And they raised in 3000 Juno, and I stopped myself. I really like, I take NAD plus and stuff. I take tons of supplements.
I take supplements
Just,
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna order like also the NMN powder myself, because now I take nicotinamide riboside. They say NMN is better, but they raised 3000 Juno. Let's say it at the current price is $90,000. And I was thinking, how is it's going to work? Are they opening a lab? Are they going to import NMN from China? Like, if like for me it was like, hey, I think I would prefer still buy NMN from certified lab with 99.8% purity than from DAO that doesn't have certificate of the purity. And I was like, I'm not sure if we need the DAO for this one.
I do not know much about that project except for
Yeah.
being aware that it exists. I did a search about NMN and learn a little bit about it, and I think that was the extent of that. I think the question you raise is effectively, however, a question about how institutions kind of work to achieve legitimacy and assure quality, right? And currently we have this situation where, and let's stick with the medical example. The FDA in the United States, and I'll stick with the United States. I don't know if you're based in the US, but I am. The FDA is the canonical institution that provides assurance the quality of medical goods. Now, there's this other thing you could do where you say that it's not a medical good, and that's the gray area of supplements. So then when you have these third-party institutions that do things like test, that it is 99% purity or whatever. In any case, you have this institutional configuration where institutions compete and cooperate to achieve legitimacy. And this is a dynamic that could play on any substrate. DAOs, corporations, LLCs, totally affiliated government agencies. The question of how legitimacy is achieved is right now an open one. And what you notice in the US in particular is that the FDA has lost legitimacy among a lot of the population, right? And I believe that a lot of those people are incorrect in adjusting, for example, the risks of vaccines, which I believe are acceptably low to justify, taking them. But it's not really about vaccines so much as the lack of faith in institutions to protect people's safety. And this is a downstream impact, the fact that dominant institutions in general have failed to protect the interests of the young. Climate change is the canonical example of this, but by no means the only example. And what we see is this void by which new institutions are starting to emerge, challenging their legitimacy and finding new points of legitimacy. Now, you may identify that this is not an institution that you find legitimate. That's fine, okay? No one is saying that you should or need to. The question is more that in my mind, is this historical narrative of this quest for new sources of legitimacy and new legitimate institutions as incumbent institutions are faltering.
Sorry, I was like thinking of all of that you said, and like you also mentioned the vaccines, and I'm thinking, hey, also in this case, in any possibility, I would be way happier to take whether vaccine made by Pfizer or Novavax or whoever than made vaccine by DAO, just because I don't know, just like it's off topic, but
okay,
yeah,
listen, I hear you. I think just to drill in my point a little bit more, it is conceivable to me that someday a DAO that serves an analogous role to the FDA could have as much or more legitimacy than the United States FDA. I believe that it is possible for some DAO, not saying this one, okay, not saying any DAO that exists currently, but someday some DAO could have the same kind of legitimacy that the FDA or any other kind of institution has. And they'll have to earn it, and that will be a lot of discursive work that happens over a really long time, and it will be very messy. They will not have legitimacy. Everyone, no institution does. In fact, what we see more of is this issue where one institution claims to have a monopoly on legitimacy, and that in turn creates distrust. What we see now, I think, are these things that say, hey, they don't have a monopoly on legitimacy. I'm also legitimate. We see the competition for legitimacy. Will it cause chaos? Yes, sometimes it will, right? But we already have a chaos situation. So I think a bit of experimentation and open-mindedness, the fact that although no DAO day is as legitimate as the FDA, someday some DAO could be, I think it's something we need to keep an open mind to. I'm not saying it will happen, I think it could.
Yeah, like I hope it will be as good, because I believe that it's good to have some sort of trusted regulation, for the
Absolutely.
for the
Regulation is
products
critical.
that come. For now, what I was seeing, for example, I would totally, when it comes to medical field, I read or listened some videos that the insulin, for example, in US is very expensive. So probably you
Mhm.
could create the DAO that is also considered illegal, that produce cheap
Yeah, we
insulin and
produce
distribute
insulin.
to
Absolutely.
people to cannot afford it. So I would see it as a
Absolutely.
kind of but here this is the area. So I don't see it with NMN because there is not regulated market for that really. But with insulin, when you get like
I
choice
hear
and pay,
that.
yeah.
There are a lot, and EpiPens are another example of something that is, unconscionably expensive, and many people in the US don't have insurance, right?
Yeah.
I think it would be amazing for someone to do that. I think it would really force the government hand to shut down someone who's providing affordable insulin as a service. That would be very poor optics on the part of law
Mhm.
enforcement to do that. And I think creating that kind of spectacle would be a tremendous kind of political opportunity. I'm not personally willing to get a criminal record by doing that, but if someone is, I think they should totally consider doing that. At the same time, I caution people that creating a DAO that produces insulin is not like necessarily going to solve our medical problems in the United States. Those problems are structural. And insofar as DAOs can make point and lobby for structural change, that's great, right? But I don't want to be too I don't want to be too much of drink the Kool-Aid here. Like, all of these
Mhm.
DAOs exist in this political context, and as far as political action, they can be extremely effective. They're not a solution in and of themselves. They're only a solution when combined with other kinds of collective action to produce structural change, right?
So like I don't want to also bring like kind of negative thoughts, but for me the kind of beauty of Juno blockchain and its DAOs is that I feel it will be sort of the anarchy in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is the good word, but I think there will be chaos, there will be many scams as well.
Right.
And I believe that it could be also used to a lot of activities that people would claim are harmless, like actually the DAOs,
Absolutely.
because I could make the DAO like distributing, I don't know, weapons, drugs, whatever I
Of
want,
course.
right?
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
could do it. So do you think that essentially there will be big expansion of this area on the Juno network, like at some point when these
Mm.
groups will find, hey, we can do it here and no one will find us?
Yes. So
Yeah.
your question is an excellent one. We think about it all the time. And I think what we come to is basically the following. As long as our governance over the network is strong enough and decisive enough, we can regulate behavior really well. And when it comes to DAO in particular, we can regulate. And some people say that's censorship. You can't do that. Equality assurance and safety are not the same as censorship. And
Hmm.
you don't like it, you can create your own chain, right? So
Yeah.
our curatorial power and the trust, again, this comes back to this notion of institutional trust, the trust that our institution can create by exerting that curatorial power is the main thing we can do to combat these bad uses, and also to drive meaningful political change with DAOs that
Hmm.
have a meaningful chance of producing political change. This is
Hmm.
where curation really comes into the fold, and this is how we think about that problem.
Hmm. Um, so sorry for like jumping to already another subject, but
That's great.
like because you were I saw you were writing a little bit on DNS as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I wonder if you ever heard of the Handshake Protocol, maybe?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, like just wanted because yeah, I was quite interested in Handshake. In fact, I own like 7,000 names on Handshake. But
Really cool.
yeah, they are not the perfect ones. I got few single letter emojis. I bought like 3 months
Nice.
ago. Or like yeah, I. But anyway, there is new naming service which doesn't try to be the um DNS system. It's seems to be more like related to the wallet, right? So I wonder what could be the question here. Do you think maybe protocol like Handshake could replace the current DNS system? Do you think it's actually good to have the centralized naming service? Because I understand this is more censorship resistant, but regarding security of the users, I'm not sure with this. And what was your role maybe with this name service on built on the Juno network? And
Sure.
what role it will has, because I also seen you, I think was in your blog something that you see the naming as the DAOs basically that can issue
I do.
the names, right? So for example, if you have the else how, you can then issue the name for your DAO, etc.
Right. So there are a lot of questions that you just asked me here. Let me return
Yeah,
to an
sorry.
overarching theme that I think explains my perspective the best. And it goes back to this idea of there being institutions that have lost trust, dominant institutions that have lost trust. Okay.
Mhm.
So understanding that the current root DNS is not a decentralized system in the way we currently understand with blockchain, and putting that aside for now, okay? The root DNS is also not a decentralized institution in the sense that its membership is kind of homogenous, it's kind of opaque, and its relationship with ICANN and IANA and all of these other kinds of institutions, it's very hard for us to understand how and why they make the governance decisions they make over this network. Okay, that is the problem that motivates any kind of solution to DNS. Okay, the reason that other DNS alternatives exist is that this institution has lost people's faith as the canonical institution. There's a difference between it being centralized and canonical, okay? Centralized means that it's kind of an argument about its infrastructure and the way that it's composed. Canonical means that people accept it as canonical. It is the name people use. The root DNS, let's make no mistake about it, is a canonical naming system, okay? They really don't want you to run alternative root DNS. Makes sense. That would hurt their role as the canonical DNS. It would also create naming collisions, which are a serious security issue and usability issue, right? But mostly, let's say, security issue, right? So having choice in the naming system is this example of where, when an institution that's dominant suddenly begins to falter and alternatives emerge to challenge its dominance, chaos can be created. Chaos looks specifically like name collisions. Okay, that is the shape of chaos here. In the medical example, it may look like conflicting information about medical stuff is probably even more chaotic, but here it looks like naming collisions, simpler even to talk about, right? So the question in my mind is not about is Handshake or ENS or DS, the best. The question is how to produce a governance system that has authority that is derived from its kind of legitimacy, right? And derived from its legitimacy in part because it's transparent and we can understand why it makes decisions that it makes. This is how authority would have to be revived for a naming system to remain canonical. Currently, we're in a situation where I think it's very precarious. It hangs in the balance whether the root DNS will remain the canonical naming system or whether ENS and Handshake will join and create maybe a bit of fragmentation in naming, right? Now, if I were inside kind of ICANN and IANA, I would say you guys need to reform your governance strategies and maybe even your technical implementation if you want to regain this legitimacy, right? And that's my perspective on all of this. Okay, so when it comes to DNS, the project that I worked on with Frey, whom I know you've already spoken to, that was very much the perspective I'm bringing to the table there. How can we have governance over this naming system that makes the naming system legitimate, right? And also, we weren't trying to solve the problem of all names in the world. We were trying to name entities in a particular ecosystem, which is what I think, I would argue we did solve that problem relatively well. We have legitimacy in that use case, right? But when I'm thinking about stuff like Handshake was trying to solve all naming for all content on the internet, yeah, listen, I don't think that they've gotten governance quite right. ENS hasn't gotten governance quite right either. It's just 407 multi-sig, which is the worst way of doing it, but maybe not the best way of doing it. But at the same time, both are better than ICANN. You have to admit, ICANN's gotten the most wrong of all, right? So that's really, I think, why we're seeing these issues emerge. It's this crisis of legitimacy of governance over naming.
Mm-hmm. yeah, like I had the simple, because like it's obvious I'm quite bullish on the handshake, but so let's say I owe the top level domain, ATH, but I don't look after it, and I wonder if I would forget about this one day, but people use the subdomains there. I don't think I'm the best institution to hold the power over this, the top level domain.
So let's say you own a top level domain, right?
Yeah.
And now you are in the DAO of all holders of all top level domains.
Mhm.
Now that DAO can and should, and this is my opinion, and some people think I'm, kind of advocating for censorship here. That DAO can and should revoke your name if they want to.
Mhm.
That's a safety issue, right? If you're doing something that domain in your domain within your domain that the DAO doesn't like, they revoke your entire top level domain from you.
But
Now, if you aren't, then you can leave you alone, and within your domain, you can do whatever you want, your own DAO if you want to.
but that also, it's still there's another issue, right? But because that brings the danger that someone has very strong community and it's like, look, I like this name, let's get into this DAO and revoke his name and bring it to me. That's
Well, that would mean that the governance solution is working poorly, in which case it would lose
Mhm.
legitimacy and someone would go to a different governance solution. So again, this comes back to the notion of legitimate governance. Legitimate government governs legitimacy, governs legitimately. And the difference between, censorship and governance is a fine line that's basically defined by the consent of the governed, right? So if this DAO is doing something that's extremely controversial and a lot of people in the DAO don't like it, they will form their own system and challenge the legitimacy of the system that they left, which is exactly what we see with ICANN.
I wonder, like, is the ENS in this matter decentralized? Because that if this kind of, I don't know if I should use the word top level domain because it actually doesn't function as the domains, right? But if itself is centralized by the Ethereum name service. Am I correct
I would
here?
agree. I would agree. I would say that is not governable in the way that I would say that ENS is not governable in the way that I would ideally like to see a name system be governable.
But then, like, what I want to see when you with this new name service on Juno,
Mm-hmm.
when you get the name, it's yours. It cannot be
Yes,
related.
absolutely. Yes. No,
So
no, no. Yeah.
this is
That's
something that
not
I
how
really
it
like.
works. Yes. Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
actually something I like, that it's not just the subdomains, as every network seems to like
Right.
being copying Ethereum, which I really liked. In the same was with DAO, that with Juno came these new alternatives, and that was like name service. We don't build that Juno, we build a name service, and you can have whatever you want, and it can be used as the DAOs
Right.
and
And
stuff
you own
like
it.
this.
You have actual ownership of that name. It's not something that you rent or lease from someone who extracts rent
Exactly.
off
That's
of
what I
their
was
actual
saying. That
ownership of
when
it.
I
Right.
get
Right.
it, when I yeah,
That is critical.
that's what I was saying. I get it and I have it. Do you have some names? Did you get some names
No, no, no.
yourself?
I think I have LSAL. Yeah, but I don't want to hog names. I like to develop more than to hoard.
Okay, that's what. Well, I wish I would be at the skill of developing stuff. That's
Oh, you can.
that yeah. Like
You can
I
learn.
think Rust is like exciting to the point. Maybe I will try to learn.
You
Look,
should absolutely.
yeah, like this year. I make that
Great.
promise here on the look. It was really pleasure talking to you.
Oh, pleasure talking to you.
You're really easy to answer questions, like in the straight way, which I really enjoyed, and I think it made it clear to some people, like what.
Marcin, you're great at asking questions. You ask fantastic questions. It's so easy
Thank
to
you.
answer these questions.
I wish I could be better. Like if we do it again, I will think of
I
more
hope we will.
questions.
I'm so sorry that my browser on my dumb, weird OS
It's fine. I
distribution is
also
crashing.
yeah.
I was thinking my internet connection's perfectly fine. It was just the browser issue. But anyway,
I
next
also
time we
want
do that, I'll
to
figure that out.
I want to say absolutely don't worry. Like as I said, I like to run these interviews. Just whatever happens, it happens, right? So it's fine. We will do it again. And someone was saying there was some sound on your microphone, so like,
Yeah, well, next time I'll do it. I'll figure all that. I'll do a
because
sound check. We'll get it right next time.
I think there might be more more interviews coming your way, because
I'd love that.
you are a builder, and you are easy to talk. I also want to say that you run the validator, so I delegated some of the tokens on the
Thank you.
Stargates, I think, and on the Juno.
Great.
So
Yeah, run LSAO validator on Stargaze and Juno.
so if someone wants to support you, delegate to else how validator on Stargaze and Juno and other networks.
Stargaze, Juno, and Oasis network.
Okay,
Daylight
and
network
also
on Oasis.
at else how, maybe I'm going to share it at else how on the Twitter, right? And I recommend to everyone going to else.how and learn a little bit more what Nick is doing. Maybe check his GitHub to spy on him where he contributes. Read his articles that he wrote. And well, I'm not gonna hold you. I know you're running late now, probably.
Thank you so much, Marcin. It was great to talk to you, and I look forward to doing this again soon.
Thank you. Thank you
Take
for
it
your
easy.
time. Bye bye.